And now it is my pleasure to introduce Philip Howard, MAS Chairman Emeritus and member of the board. In addition to his distinguished work as Vice Chairman of the law firm Covington & Burling, he is one of New York's most prominent civic leaders. As Chairman of MAS, Philip drove our efforts to install Tribute in Light, which has become one of the nation's most poignant memorials honoring the victims of the September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center. A public policy activist and author, Philip has advised numerous national political leaders, including Vice President Al Gore and several 2008 presidential hopefuls, on legal and regulatory reform. Philip has written several books, including Life Without Lawyers, The Death of Common Sense, and Collapse of the Common Good. In 2002, Philip formed Common Good, a nonpartisan national coalition dedicated to restoring common sense in America. In 2008, Common Good led a group of nonprofit organizations in creating New Talk, an online forum presenting focused discussions among experts in theory, policy, and practice on the most important domestic topics affecting America today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Philip Howard.
Thank you, Van. It's a pleasure to be here. The theme of livability is extraordinarily important and doesn't get that much attention. We take it for granted. But it's worth reflecting for a second on what a great city we live in and what the components of that are. And the words that come to mind to me are opportunity, inspiration, spontaneity, amazing people, amazing cultural resources. I've always thought of New York as a kind of magical test tube where the molecules fly around at warp speed, spinning gold with some sort of urban alchemy. Things happening because we're all here together in this Jane Jacobs environment of creation and opportunity. And it's a place where not only the city collectively accomplishes a lot, but it's also where individuals can find fulfillment. Not only because the city offers so much to them, because it gives them an opportunity, gives each of us an opportunity to use what we have inside of us. It actually allows us to use our muscles and find fulfillment in making a difference. Here's what it afforded me. I came here from Eastern Kentucky out of college. I've had 2 careers, at least 3 serious avocations, including the honor of being chair of the Municipal Art Society. I met a girl in an elevator on Madison Avenue. We've had 4 children. We've sang in a choir, a local choir with musicians in any other city you'd have to pay a lot of money to see from a distance. We sang with them in a choir for 15 years. I started a business, wrote books, have friends in every conceivable line of work, and every day I run into people I want to talk to by accident, on the sidewalk, in the subway, everywhere. And it's also a city where, in my life here, we've had strong leaders. When a friend of mine the week after 9/11 called up and said, I can't see the towers, it's terrible, you should put lights up there, I called up the leaders of MAS and said, you know, we really need to organize something. We organized a committee in support of this, offered to pay for it, but it ran into bureaucratic obstacles and it looked like it wasn't going to happen. Mayor Bloomberg got elected, as you recall, that fall, came in, and one of the first things that Patty Harris did was said, this is a great idea, and Mayor Bloomberg and Patty Harris made this happen, and it's probably the most prominent piece of public art memorial, perhaps in history, but certainly one of the most important and visible in history, because people had an idea in New York, and we had leaders who were willing to make the choice to make it happen. I had a friend years ago who was a Southern lady, who was older, who was very active in civic affairs. And I once asked her, I said, when did you come to New York? And she said, oh, as soon as I heard about it. It's just a great place. But we can't take it for granted. Cities throughout history, great cities, Antioch, Rome, others, have fallen into decay sometimes after centuries of vitality. It's like a garden that isn't tended. If you let it go to seed, what happens is new plants can't grow anymore. And so you have to be vigilant in making it livable and providing the opportunity for people to do all of what I just talked about. So some of the elements we know about, it has to be safe and clean. City planning is important. You have to have a framework where people can meet and come together spontaneously. There's this horrible tendency of human nature to try to make something perfect once and for all. So whenever we have a big project planned in New York, and this is the risk in my view in the Hudson Yards project on the west side, you try to make it perfect and have towers and parks and circles, and pretty soon it's isolated and it's not organic, and it loses that Jane Jacobs opportunity to change over time. We have to constantly be vigilant to do that. But there's another risk and another threat that no one's talking about that's a significant threat to the livability of New York City and to a certain extent to the country, and that's a growing bureaucracy that shackles government, stifles individual innovation, and makes it almost impossible to adapt to current challenges. So, for example, we need to build new infrastructure in this city. President Obama in his State of the Union speech said, "There's no reason France or China should have the fastest trains." Well, yes, there is. Environmental impact statements have evolved into a process of no pebble left unturned. It takes a decade or longer to get approvals. It will literally be the year 2025 or 2030 before you could ever even start building a new rail line or power grid or anything else that we need, because the president, even the president, doesn't have the authority to make these choices after a reasonable review period. The New York governor, we'll have a new New York governor elected in a few weeks. He will come to an office where most of the budget has been pre-committed by mandates, entitlements, and contracts that were agreed to by political leaders who are now dead. And he has no authority to go and say, okay, let's shave a little here, shave a little there, so that the budget can be balanced and so that New Yorkers don't have to pay taxes that might drive us out of New York. He doesn't have the authority because it's all institutionalized in old law. Innovation, you need to constantly change things. I was working with Deputy Mayor Stephen Goldsmith, who's a brilliant innovator of operations, used to be mayor of Indianapolis the other day, and he said, well, you know, I've been here for now a few months. I have all these great ideas about how to streamline things to make it work better. The problem is most of them are illegal. Starting a business. If you start a business in New York City today, you cannot comply with the law. You can't know what the law is. You couldn't afford the lawyers to tell you what all the laws are. So you started with what one expert called unconscious noncompliance. You just sort of forge ahead and hope nobody catches you, because there's so many tripwires and so many forms that you couldn't possibly know them all. That's a disincentive to the kind of energy that's required in a livable city. Teachers in New York and across the country are crushed by bureaucracy. They've lost authority to maintain order in the classroom. They're told they can't even put an arm around a crying child. So if we want a livable city, we have to bring back the conditions under which people can act on their best judgment. They can be accountable if they have bad judgment, but you have to, the essential condition is free choice and focus on what people are doing. So, you know, you have a situation in a city that has all this magic, but it's profoundly interdependent. It requires that our leaders at every level of responsibility make choices for the common good. They have to be able to make those choices. And if they can't make those choices, then our freedom deteriorates too. Our taxes are out of control. We can't get permits to do this or that. The infrastructure isn't built. The schools no longer work. So as you go through the next 2 days, talking about a wide range of ideas that are essential to enhancing the livability of the city, this great city, the greatest city on earth, I ask you to think about how it is we're going to make those choices, because we're going to have to change the structure of law, not to deregulate, but to make regulation work, to restore the human element of all leadership in order to get where we all want to go and preserve the magic that is New York. Thank you. And now, it is my honor to introduce the former Deputy Mayor, fellow MAS board member, Renee Mitchell.
Thank you, and good morning. It is my great pleasure this morning to introduce Transportation Commissioner Jeanette Sada-Khan, the most revolutionary transportation leader since Traffic Commissioner Henry Barnes made Fifth Avenue one-way in the 1960s. But in fact, what Mr. Barnes did pales in comparison to Commissioner Sada-Khan's dramatic transformation of the mission of the Department of Transportation, as she has embraced the interests of pedestrians and sought to return our streets to public use in safe balance with vehicular traffic. Last year, Commissioner Sada-Khan accepted the Municipal Art Society's annual award for DOT's Sustainable Streets Strategic Plan. This was and continues to be a breakthrough vision for making streets of New York a great collection of public spaces. Her department's plan transforms some of the city's most dangerous and congested intersections into public plazas. Best known, perhaps, is the Broadway Boulevard, starting at Times Square, coming down. But in fact, street plazas are blossoming throughout the city. Another striking change is the exponential increase in the number of bikes on our streets. With 250 miles of bike lanes, a bicycle has become the vehicle of choice for thousands of New Yorkers. As someone involved with Governor's Island, as Patty Harris nicely mentioned, I was struck this summer by how many of our 443,000 visitors came by bicycle, 30,000 people. In addition, people then rented bikes on the island as well. But 30,000 drove through the bike lanes and came down to the ferry during the summer to get there. Jeanette is an extraordinary leader with enormous personal investment in what she's doing, from riding a bike to work to her deep concern for pedestrian safety. She has set a standard of excellence, creativity, and inclusiveness for her entire department, providing design guidelines through a handsome street design manual, advancing an urban art program, and launching a major new Safe Streets program for seniors, all while carrying out their traditional role of the maintenance of 6,000 miles of streets and highways, nearly 800 bridges, street and traffic lights, signage, and even the Staten Island ferry. This is really a breathtaking scope. Commissioner Sada-Khan came to her present role with experience as a senior vice president of Parsons Brinkerhoff and as deputy administrator at the Federal Transit Administration. We are very fortunate this morning in having her thoughts on urban livability, the very objective that has been at the heart of her vision all along. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner Jeanette Sada-Khan.
Well, thanks, Renee, for that very generous introduction, and it is an honor to be here today to present some of the Bloomberg administration's work to create a greater, greener, more livable city. The quality of life and the question of livability was one of the central issues that Mayor Bloomberg addressed when he released his Plan YC initiative in 2007. The plan set out a series of policies to ensure that New York City would continue to grow and thrive over the next 20 years, and that the quality of life in this city would continue to improve not only today, but when we have 9 million New Yorkers here in 2030. For city streets, this meant a significant change in city policy. Broadly, our work stems from two main principles. The first being to prioritize sustainable mobility on our streets, and the second being to treat our streets as the valuable public spaces that they are, providing more room for people to enjoy New York City and all it has to offer. A major project that embodies those themes is the transformation of Broadway into a major green corridor throughout Midtown Manhattan. The project features major plazas as well as pedestrian and bike corridors from Columbus Circle all the way down to Union Square. And you can see these changes. This is in front of Macy's. And it's just, as you can see, very easily done. Our 6-month evaluation of the project found a myriad of livability benefits, very much in keeping with the goals of Plan YC. Simplifying the street grid in Times and Herald Square made traffic move much better and also provided a significant additional room for pedestrians to move around. When you take a look at the numbers of people that we have in Times Square, some 356,000 people going through this area each and every day. And before the project, we had many New Yorkers trading the safety of the sidewalks for the streets, because there's nothing more frustrating to a New Yorker than to have to walk behind a slow-moving group of tourists. So these changes also allowed traffic to move much better on 6th and 7th Avenue. And perhaps less well known is some of the livability benefits that had a significant economic benefit. I think it's long been known in lots of transportation and planning circles that the more foot traffic you have yields much higher revenues in terms of retail earnings, and that attractive public spaces translate into better retail performance. And in Times Square, that also included the very important entertainment industry. So it was perhaps no surprise to find out that the Real Estate Board of New York, in a survey, found that the highest performing retail sector in New York City was the pedestrian areas in Times Square, and had a 71% increase in the last year alone, the highest in the city. But Broadway is not a one-off project. Rather, it is a flagship project that illustrates a set of strategies that we're implementing all around the city. And while we take ideas and tailor them from other cities and bring them to the streets of New York, probably our greatest homegrown invention is the fact that we're able to move quickly to transform the streets of New York. I think the notion of a fast-acting transportation agency has long been held as an oxymoron, but perhaps no longer. With good analysis, with paint and planters and stones, we're able to transform city streets and create great public spaces and a greening agenda in close to real time. The capital projects and the capital programs will eventually catch up, but really it's changing the use of a space that's really key. And that can be done in weeks rather than years. And I think that's really important because New Yorkers, I think, are very tired of waiting around to see changes in their streets. And this, we did a repurposing in this triangle in Brooklyn, bringing new life to this old parking lot. We did a similar thing on 9th and 14th Street, a variety of benefits there. This used to be many lanes of moving traffic filled with trucks. In short order, this plaza is used day and night. You know, you can be there at 3 a.m. and there are people filling the plaza. 3 p.m. people are filling the plaza. Great benefits, retail up in that area. We also saw a great safety benefit. Apparently there was a robbery there a couple of weeks ago, and one of the people in the plaza picked up one of the chairs and started bashing the robber, and so we've got additional safety benefits that I hadn't even anticipated in with this project. We did a similar thing in Madison Square, where we transformed a huge expanse of pavement and repurposed it to a public plaza that is truly fitting for Madison Square Park and the Flatiron District. And you can see these efforts all across the city, from the South Bronx to downtown Brooklyn. In addition, Plan YC launched a capital program to build neighborhood plazas. And this is an application-based program that's laying the groundwork for the transportation for the transformation of business districts and neighborhoods all across the city. We're in the process of the third round of applications, so now we're going to be adding to this map in short order. And in a few months, we're going to be breaking ground on the first of these new capital projects. This is at Fulton Street and Marcy Avenue in Brooklyn. And this past summer, we experimented with pop-up cafes here in Lower Manhattan, where the sidewalks are really too narrow to accommodate traditional sidewalks. And the two restaurants that we worked with to pilot this saw in the first summer alone their revenues go up 9% and 12% respectively over the previous summer. I really think that the simple step of providing seating is probably the biggest single thing that you can do to encourage public life in the city of New York, whatever form that might take. This is on Allen Street, and again, this is Columbus Circle. And I think another way to create interesting and attractive spaces and an interesting and attractive public realm is to use our streets differently for different purposes at different times. This summer, in 24 neighborhoods in every borough, these neighborhoods created their own weekend pedestrian streets with their Weekend Walks program. This is in the South Bronx, and I might add there are no tube socks or funnel cakes at these weekend walks. These is an application-based program, and it's designed to feature the local businesses and the artists in the area. Of course, the centerpiece in this regard is our Summer Streets program. We've just completed our second summer there, where we closed Park Avenue from the Brooklyn Bridge to Central Park, 7 miles of a car-free corridor for people to walk and cycle and take different kinds of classes and just do people watching. We also program it. We have kickboxing classes. Previous deputy mayor I used to report to, Ed Schuyler, we took a kickboxing class together. I'm here to report that it was very cathartic. And so it's been really popular. We had some 50,000 people come out every weekend. I know some of you have been out there to enjoy it, and I encourage you to do more of the same. I think attention to design detail is also extremely important if we want people to treat the city as a place rather than something to just hurry through. And these new plazas that we've built up create opportunities for new public art, and our deputy mayor, Patty Harris, has been really a hero in ensuring that we bring quality art to the streets of New York. And many of you may know DOT actually has an assistant commissioner for art and design, Wendy Foyer, who's really done yeoman's work in making this program happen. And this is in the Fashion District, really very popular sidewalk, catwalk installation. DOT has many canvases to work with. This is actually on the side of the Manhattan Bridge. This is on the Jersey barriers on the Kent Avenue bike lane. We don't think that the city needs to look like a construction zone all the time. We're also working extremely hard to create more travel choices for New Yorkers, which we think is a key to livability, improving the livability in New York City. And we've taken major steps to increase the choices that are available to New Yorkers. You can see here our latest project. This is on First Avenue. This is in the East Village. You can see on the left-hand side there's a protected bike lane. You can see to the right of that are protected pedestrian refuge islands, and further off is a dedicated bus lane. But all of these elements make it safer and easier to navigate the streets of New York. And we are making progress. New York City Transit runs the largest bus fleet in North America, but has the distinction of having the slowest bus speeds. My assistant commissioner for traffic used to say that the only way to get across town was to be born there. We think that we can do a better job than that. And so on Fordham Road, we piloted our first select bus service project. It's the major east-west connector in the Bronx. And with simple innovations like off-board fare collection and signals that give priority to buses and dedicated lanes, we were able to see some impressive results. Also impressive was the fact that 98% of bus riders were very satisfied with the service. I can't think of anything that 98% of New Yorkers would agree on, let alone transit service. So it's been paying big dividends. We're also planning a dedicated busway on 34th Street, which will be our first truly dedicated surface subway. We hope to have that up and running by 2012, and the project just recently got a big boost from the Obama administration. We got $18 million for this project, which really helps on the momentum here. I think it's also an important connector between the east side and the west side. You all know major developments on the west side of Manhattan are underway, similarly on the east side of Manhattan, and this will also be a thread that will tie together our ferry operations on the east and west side of Manhattan. Developing a viable cycling network is another critical mobility strategy that we're pursuing, and it also provides much needed recreational space in the city. I don't know how many of you know, but 54% of all trips in New York City are under 2 miles, as are 39% of all car trips in New York City. So since New York City is also flat, there's a great opportunity to build in a low-cost new network of mobility for New Yorkers. But I think what it will really take to get New Yorkers on bikes, other than those New Yorkers you see in the spandex, gear racing around, are bike lanes that protect you from traffic. And these lanes are improving safety every place we put them down. Every time we put down a protected bike lane, we see injuries for everyone go down 50%. So we've added 250 miles of on-street bike lanes in the last 3 years, as well as these new protected lanes. The sign of safety, scientists look to the presence of fish in a stream to determine the health of that stream. I look to the presence of families in our bike lanes as the indicator species of the health of our bike lanes, and you can see that's starting to happen all around the city. So we've built this network, and they're coming. Bike counts have more than doubled since 2006. And I think what's lesser known is that we're also starting to see a positive economic impact from these bike lanes. This is actually from the marketing material for the new Domino development in Williamsburg. And this is the marketing brochure that shows the protected bike lane on Kent Avenue as part of the new development's appeal. And it's not just bike shops that are booming. REI recently announced that they are going to be putting in their new flagship store in the Puck Building in Soho, and it was thanks to the recent push of the city to encourage bike commuting. That was the reason, according to the New York Times, that they said that they were moving forward with this new store. Finally, I want to highlight the connection between safety and livability. You can't expect people to get on a bus, get on a bike, walk around more if they do not feel safe on the streets of New York. And we just recently announced a landmark study, the largest of its kind in the United States, to understand the causes of pedestrian injuries and crashes. And what we are doing is, with these findings, we've developed an action plan to bring down fatalities on the streets of New York. Our goal is to cut them in half by 2030. We've made significant progress. We've targeted areas with high numbers of seniors, with high numbers of school kids, and we've got the lowest number of traffic fatalities now in the city's history. Our peers are really more in line with Tokyo and Berlin rather than Chicago and Washington, D.C., and our aim is to keep this trend going. Much of what we're doing is fairly simple. It's improving the safety of crosswalks in heavily used areas, like this is in Casina Boulevard in Flushing. But making these changes makes all the difference to a family who has to deal with a premature death or injury. And so we're going to up our game on the marketing, we're upping our game on our street designs, and I think that attention to safety and design and public education will yield big returns for the future of New York. So I want to thank you all for being here this morning and congratulate you and MAS for this really timely event. Thank you.